So hi again, welcome. And so I'll introduce myself again. My name is Chhlorm Serey Niron, or you can call me Niron for short. And so for today's topic, I'll cover fun ways to learn or practice your English, because learning and practice is the process as you go along. And so these are the list of things we'll be discussing today. So I'll open up with about me, get to know more about me, and we'll get to the topics, and then I'll share some resources that I think would be useful for you guys, and we'll have Q&A. So a little bit about me, like our MC has mentioned, I've graduated from high school in class of 2020 from the Leadership Academy. And currently I'm residing in a university in Thailand called King University of Technology. And I'm studying for a bachelor degree of fine and applied art in industrial design. And I'm a second year, I'm a sophomore. And if you have any questions about me, you can ask later on. So I'll get right into the topics. So first and foremost, I'd like to give a focus about these topics. So I want to focus on independent learning, which is something you do by yourself, or DIY, because normally when you go to schools, there's different curriculums provided by the schools and the teachers, but independent learning is something you do individually, and it's different for everybody else. And it's good to remind yourselves that we are all different, meaning we come from different environment, we come from different places, we meet different people, and we are given different opportunities in different circumstances. And because of the different places we come from, we are exposed to different people who come from different backgrounds. Some of you might met with people who are native English speakers. Therefore, you get a sense and ideas of what the accent is like and the body language they use and the words they use. And some of you might not, and that's okay. You can always find different ways to learn about those. And a little bit of a motivation is that we have different timelines. Therefore, you don't have to compare yourself to other people, because people learn and gain knowledge in different form and different ways. You've heard about people who learn from who your visual learners, who see things and learn better from seeing different things, and you learn better from touching and do the actual activities. So in short, we're all different, so don't compare yourself, and that's okay. Just keep on going forward and learn different things. And so to start off, I'd like to ask you guys to drop down what is something you do for fun. I'll give you 5 minutes, and if it's possible, you can write down in the chats of what is something that you do for fun. So yeah, 5 minutes. Okay, play video games, art, listen to music. Okay. Oh, a lot of music and mangas, I see. Okay, you can drop down anything. It could be art, it could be an activities that you enjoy doing, and like reading novels. That's interesting. Oh, sleep for fun. Of course, of course. Oh, you mentioned reading mangas and drawing as well. Well, let's not waste any time, and we'll just get straight to the point. So I wanted to start off with what is something you do for fun is that in order to make learning new things fun is that we can relate to our hobbies or something we do for fun. For examples, you mentioned social games or playing video games. And of course, if we would like to have fun playing video games, whether enjoying the whole game, the experience itself, but another way that you can take advantage of that opportunities to practice your English is that you can take advantage of the communication the game offers. For example, if you heard of the game like Mobile Legends, Valorant, those games allows you to communicate with your teammates, and whether that's through typing the text or have a voice communications. And the type of language I've noticed that people use is that just informal language, meaning everyday, like a conversation languages. It's not formal or a high level English. And that's a good way to practice your English, because sometimes you feel uncomfortable saying it in person, and therefore doing it online would actually help to boost your confidence. And all of these tips are some of the things I've gone through in my high school years or in my middle school years, even until now. I still do play games, and when we play games, we would often communicate, whether that's talking to the friends or whether typing in the games. And it would be great if each of you could make friends and practice your speaking skills as you go along. It might be a challenge because we are in a Southeast Asia region, meaning not a lot of Southeast Asian citizens speak English. But I'm sure we've done that at some point. But music, I'm sure music is just something more than just the melodies, the lyrics behind, and there's the meaning behind the lyrics. And one activity I used to do when I was in high school for my English literacy is that we dissect the meaning of the lyrics, meaning we try to understand the meaning of the lyrics, because most songs, they have rhymes and rhythms. Therefore, it's like a poem. And in a poem, there's like meanings, hidden meanings. And one of the best part about songs that you can enjoy it by singing as well. Normally you would just listen and maybe mumbles as you go along, like a karaoke. But if you take times and try to read lyrics and listen to the song, you might discover different meanings and different gestures or different vocabulary. And I'm sure at some point you try to copy the accents of the singer, whether it's an English song or K-pop or J-pop or a Thai song. You would try to copy the accents. And one of the best part about learning English is that you would have to practice not only in writing but also speaking. And when you speak, you would notice different accents. And if you're wanting to get better in English, then you have to practice that accent as well, to give it a smooth accents as you go along. And another way that I still do until today is listen to podcasts. Basically, it's just a radio or different conversations about different interesting topics. The topic could be anything. It could be how to improve your English. That could be a topic in a podcast. And usually in a podcast is having a conversations between different people. And so, and in learning a language is also means you have to speak and you have to communicate with people, and conversation is communicating between one person and another, or a discussion, which is you communicate with a group of people. Not only that you gain knowledge from the podcast, you can also try to learn the tonality use and the accents and the etiquettes, which is something that comes with the different cultures. And so, for examples, in some cultures, it would be rude to speak over someone who hasn't finished the sentence. And you might learn a lot from that in listening to podcasts or even watching movies. And one of the skills that I'd like to point out is that an interview skill, which is an important soft skills or a hard skill. You could it's debatable. And as you go on to becoming an adult, at one point you're going to interview some people or do a survey, and an effective interviews that you need to ask good questions. You need to be able to read the body language and listen to podcasts. You come across a lot of people who asking questions and make the how to carry on the conversations, how to make the conversation fluid. And that is just a skills as you learn about learning a different language. It's the way they speak and the etiquettes and the tone they use, because I'm sure in Khmer and in English you would come across different type of tone people use in a sentence or in a word. And another one would be movies and videos. And I'm sure each and every one of us would consider watching movies or Netflix as something that you would relax. You just chill on your couch, on your bed, and you're on the phone just watching movies, and you just want to enjoy it. And no doubt about it, you should enjoy and have a relax and chill time watching movies. But at the same time, you can take advantage of that and learn the language used and the body language. And once you're able to see how people act when they talk and speak in a different word, in a different accents and a different slangs, you're able to connect between body parts and how this person say this word. Like for example, right now, I'm using different type of gestures with my hands, and because I think that using body part is another way to communicate or convince my audience. And that is something that you don't see a lot in Khmer culture. We don't use a lot of body language. And once you start to learn about English, you see people who's talking English, they use a lot of body language. And that is something you would see in movies and videos. So besides just focusing on the content of the movies, you can actually learn about, oh, how does this person ask questions? What kind of body language they use? Maybe they tilt the head or something. Like in India, I'm sure you've seen that people just turn their head when they ask questions or say something. Now that is a part of the body language. Maybe that helps to communicate some sort of meaning when they try to say something. And that's the same part for learning a new language, especially in English. You see a lot of body language. And even watching anime, I do still watch anime, and even though it's in Japanese, I do read the subtitles. And I think as you go on, you'll understand different words that have a different tones, and then you try to map it with the subtitles of that sentence. And something I want to mention regarding movies and videos is two words. It's denotations and connotations. So denotation is it's the actual meaning of a word, and connotation is an indirect feeling or indirect meaning of a word. For an example, you can say the word blue. Blue is a color. That's the denotations. And if you go to a dictionary, it's a color. But for connotations with a feeling that we give to the word blue is that it means sad or it means depressing. So that's the connotations. And if you're in school, you most of the time you would only learn about the meaning from dictionary. But if you're in the open world, if let's say you're watching videos on YouTube's or movies, different people would try to convey the meaning or show the meaning using connotations or will exaggerate the meaning a little bit. And that's the difference between learning in classroom and using the world as your classroom. So I'm sure you've all, like I've seen people mention about reading mangas and news articles. And a lot of the mangas contains drawings, and with the drawing there's some dialogues that people having conversation with, or maybe a descriptions or some sort. And that is still something useful for you to try to practice your English. Not only if you're able to understand from reading the manga, it's similar to the movies. Not only because maybe there's no animations or movement, it's still in 2D, but you'll still be able to understand the dialogues and the questions people use in a manga. And I do sometimes read webtoons, and I do enjoy reading it because when you're reading it, you simulate your mind, you get creative with your imaginations, and it improves your vocabulary a lot. Because when you read, you try to understand this word and understand the sentence, and you will try to break down the sentence. What's the meaning of the sentence? And my teachers, one of my English teachers always says that the more you read, the better you write. And I think that is true. And I do encourage all of you to read. You can read anything, whether it's books, fictions, non-fictions, news article, to keep up with the current event. And eventually you're gonna expose yourself to a different type of writing, and maybe whether it's a poem or an argumentative writing or an argumentative essays. And because if you diverse yourself to different form of literature, you'll be able to understand how different ways people used to communicate to different type of users or different people, whether it's like questions and how to form a sentence, a simple sentence. There are different type of sentence as you go on when you learn about English. And one main part I want to talk about is develop your imaginations. If you haven't noticed, when you read a book, it's just a bunch of letters in a piece of paper. But in your mind, I'm sure some of you would start to imagine an image in your head and think, for example, a sentence would read, there's a field of green flowers. You would read that sentence, but in your mind, you would imagine, I'm in the middle of a field with a lot of green flowers. And that really helps with your imaginations. I'm sure you've heard about something called visual learners. You would learn more if you see what's being taught rather than just listening. And personally, I think that I'm a visual learner. I learn better, I memorize better by seeing what I'm learning, whether that's watching the movies or maybe painting or maybe drawings. Even though reading is not something you learn visually, it's something that helps to stimulate your visual learning capacity in your head, and that is imaginations. And imagination is free. It's something we come up with ourselves, and it's unique to our personality, and it's all based on you. Some people might imagine things differently, and that's because we're all specials. We read off of the same sentence and we see different images in your head. And it does help to have someone to talk to as well. And you've heard of a phrase called practice make perfect or practice make permanent. And because practice is really important in our lives. And so little a kid, I love drawing a lot. And so I would draw a lot of things per day since I was 5 or 6 years old. Then people say I have a talent in drawing. And ever since I got into high schools, I kind of gave up drawings or something. So I never really pick up a pencils and draw. And until now, I would say that I'm a beginner in drawing. And that is an example of talent without practice. If you have a talent, let's say maybe understanding the English or speaking the English or memorizing the vocabulary, but if you don't practice it, it's gonna go to waste. And at some point, you actually would regret that you don't practice, because if you have something you're good at, why don't you just keep us practicing it and improve it? And so where I came from, meaning the high schools, that I was surrounded by native English speakers, and that really helps me in terms of learning the accents and the authentic in the vocabulary they use. and the slang. If you don't know what slang is, it's just a language that people use informally or people use in the daily conversations. For example, you would have people say, "Hey, what's up, man?" You don't normally and you don't go straight to your boss and say, "Hey, what's up?" That is very informal, or something you don't usually say to someone who you pay respect to. Instead, you would say, "Hello, how are you?" That is formal language. But the local slang is, "Hey, what's up?" So if you want to be able to more about the English, you wouldn't want to learn just about the formal language or the formal ways to make a conversations. You might want into formal ways. People speak with a phrase that people use to exaggerate a meaning or for examples, you've heard of a phrase called a piece of cake. So for example, people will say, "I'm having a piece of cake," meaning it's easy for someone to learn to ride a bike, and it was easy. But to convey different emotions, to have to have exaggerates what you learn, or to make yourself feel a bit more comfortable with your English, is that you use an idioms or slang to make it seems more casual or informal. And if you have someone to talk to, maybe whether it's to text or messenger or face to face or voice call, it will actually help to improve your confidence a lot. And I'd say this coming from myself, who speak zero to none, speak not no English at all when I first got into the like a leadership academy. And the only way to improve your confidence is to just keep speaking, speak in front of people, speak in front of your friends. It might look weird going home and then your parents would see you talk to yourself or talk to someone in another language. But if you feel embarrassed, that's okay. Just know that you're not the only one out there. There's people who will try to practice different skills that would require, having to improve yourself or speaking to someone or speaking alone. And improving the confidence is one of the most important things. Learning a different skill or learning a new skills or learning a new language. Because if you don't have the confidence, then everything you learn will just stick to yourself. You don't get to use it out in the real world. And so the last part is connecting to maybe playing video games or making friends, and that is networking. So networking is, if you haven't heard, it's a soft skill, which means it's not a hard skill. It's like making clay pots. So that's hard skill. Soft skill is something you come up with your brains or your mind, and you get creative with it. And networking is meaning you try to connect with different type of people, and once you have connected with different type of people, you get different ideas of where they come from, where all those people come from. You learn about their cultures, you learn about their backgrounds, and once you learn about your background, you start to make conversations with different people, and that's when you can try to practice your English. Because sometimes you might heard about accents or slangs, and people come from different type of background, different part of the world, and they have different accents. Even in Khmer, like I came from Bunti, and I'd say we still have an accent. It's something called like Krim Pesa. We sometimes when I speak this, you might notice the tone and the accents different than people in, let's say, in Phnom Penh or in Kampong Cham. And that's the same for English. The different people who has different accents. Let's say someone who come from Russia, they have different accents when they speak English. So if you network with different type of people, you will meet people who come from different backgrounds, who have different accents, and you might find it hard to understand. But that's the key. Is to try to expose yourself to different type of cultures and accents, and therefore you would have a lot of experience meeting the different type of people. So one day you might meet a guy who's from France who speak English. You might not be able to understand it perfectly, but at least you've heard a bit. At least you have the experience. You've heard about the accents, and and another point is having an online community, and especially during COVID, we were not allowed to go outside like before. There's lockdowns and all of that, and having an online community like Reddit's, I'm sure you're all familiar with Facebook's or Quora. It's something that you can share of like your experience, and as- and sharing experience is something that's really important. It's not only you're able to practice your English well, you're able to share your thoughts and your experience and maybe your environment or your stories. And for example, in Reddit, there's something called subreddit where you can subscribe to a group or join a group, and therefore you can ask questions, and people from all around the world would, if they see your questions, and they might face the same situation as you, and then they would share their experience, or someone who have gone through the same situations you face, they can share their experience. And not only it's something that you can build a network for yourself, but also something that you can practice your English and be comfortable sharing your experience in a new language. And you might be tempting and be insecure that, hey, maybe my English is not that good, and what if they judge my grammar? And that's the whole part about learning a new language. You're going to make mistakes. I'm sure that sometimes I would go back and read an essay I wrote 3 years ago, and I would find tons of mistakes I made in my essays. And that is when you know that you've come a long way of learning a different language, because you make mistakes and you learn from those mistakes. And one of the best part about this online community is that you can stay anonymous, meaning you don't have to maybe give out your whole name or your private informations. You can just be anonymous, or people won't know who you are, and you can share those experience without having to fear that people can know your private informations, like know where you live. You don't have to put all sort of information online, and that's one of the best part about having online community. And I think last but not least is to ask a lot of questions. You have to be curious, because questions actually make you think, whether it's coming up with the answer for the questions or trying to form a questions. And that is when you try to understand it. And that is when you try to challenge your mind to come up with ways to form a questions, because sometimes you have an expectations for an answer, and you want to, let's say you want to get that answer you want it, but you don't know to ask questions. And sometimes you ask questions and it lead those people to answer a different thing that you don't want. And that's the power of the question. You need to be able to form a good questions so that those who answer can answer what you wanted. And it also asking question is something to keep the conversations or discussion alive. Oftentimes if you're talking one-on-one, you would have to ask questions. Say, hey, whether it's having a simple conversations. For example, hey, do you have how was your day? Now that's a question, and people would answer it with, oh, my day is great, and how about you? So even though those type of questions are short and simple, that's something that keep the conversation alive. And if you're in an environment where there's a different type of people who would want to speak and share their thoughts, you can relate to the way they speak or share your experience, but eventually you're going to have to ask questions. And you can use, I'm sure you've heard of what, when, where, why, and how. I think by answering all of those 5 questions, you're able to piece together stories. and and I think for most, like I mentioned again, it's all come down to practice, practice, and practice. But I can share you some experience. Actually, when I was in high school, we had this, and then and our school only have 50 students, and so everybody knows everybody. And we have this program called 1 month of English, meaning we have to speak only English and no Khmer at all, except you have to speak to someone who doesn't speak no English at all, whether it's a Khmer staff. But if you speak to your friends, it has to be English. And that is a challenge really, because knowing very little thing about English, it makes it difficult, but it also makes it challenge your brain to think of creative ways of saying different things. So for examples, I remember I had to ask my friends to pass a bottle of soy sauce, and I didn't know what it called. But at the same time, I want to have the integrity. I don't want to speak Khmer, so I just want to speak English. So I think I ended up saying, can you pass me that bottle of sweet soy sauce?" And or whether sometimes I think I would say, "Can you pass me that bottle of that black water thingy?" See, even though it's not the correct way to saying soy sauce, but it challenged your brain to come up with and piece up together a sentence or a question or questions. And a quote I usually go by is that you are the captain of your ship, meaning you're the one that control your own mind. And eventually, right now you're still teenagers or kids, but eventually when you're an adult, there's no one to help you and give you directions or where on what to do. So for right now, I'm living in a dorm in my college, and so I'm very far away from my parents. Therefore, there are things that I have to manage myself, whether it's being independent. When I learn, I need to be learning independently. I need to manage my time or make a budget my time wisely. And that's a part of being adult. So you're the captain of your ships. You're the only one that can steer your way and move in different directions. So I want to share some resources that I think it's useful for you guys. Oh, maybe you can't see it. Okay. So these are some resources that would actually help with your independent learning. Of course, they're all in English, but I think it's also this. You can take a screenshots. But so these resources I use a lot as I grew up in high school. And let's say Khan Academy, for examples, it's a free resources online. You can use it with your phones or your laptops. It would help. And there's like practices for grammars, English grammars, or even for math. And there's TEDx, short videos, short educational videos. And Quizlets is something that I use to help myself with memorizing different terms or vocabularies. And Desmos is a graph for math. And I'm sure sure it would be useful once you're in the 11th or 12th grade where you have to graph them things. And so Notion is something that I use to have to organize my life. And because as you go on in college, there are different things that you need to organize. For example, this one is something that I used to manage my times, make a schedules, and I use it for my college schedule as well. So I have 4 different classes, and I use it to take notes. And I think these are resources that would help strive with your independent learning a lot. So I just want to share it right here. And I think this is it. And time for questions, I guess. So if you have any questions, whether it's about what I present or the topics or about me, you can drop it down. Also, I've seen a question and it says, how do you deal with close-minded people who told you to not speak English because they say you'll forget your own native language? And it is important to also remind yourself about your native language. But at the same time, it's learning a different skills. I mean, you diverse yourself. If you're learning a new language, it's something that have to simulate your mind. It makes you a bit more creative because you're trying to force yourself and take a challenge and take risk learning a different language. But should always revert back to your native language. And there's still, of course, there are people like that who just um, I would say, old-fashioned, and the only way to deal with it is to just, if you have a conversation with them, talk to them and say, I'm not really good with it because I haven't met a lot of people like this, but usually I would just ignore them because there's no use of just debating with them about that. Eventually, it's a matter of time whether you're gonna talk in Khmer or English. It's just the matter of using both at the right time, at the right moment. Oh, what drawing? Drawing, I do enjoy drawing, but have you ever have to look up for something online? Let's say you want to draw Super Mario, and you only search Super Mario, and one of the key skills in independent learning is that you have to search it online. So I guess you can take that opportunities to learn about different ways to search, and so we come up with the thing you look for. Because there's I would say a trillion things in Google, and Google has everything you have to search for. And the only way to make it useful, to be useful with Google, is that to make sure you use the right keyword when you search. And that's when you're drawing as well. When you draw, you want to maybe look for a reference, look for a keyword. And that's when you try to learn different vocabularies, different keywords for what you want to search. So we come up with the result you wanted. Or how to get rid of bad habits. Habits is so the difference between habits and personalities is that you need to identify whether it's a personality or a habit. But normally I would say you can change your habits. And there's something I read about how habits are formed. Usually there's a cue, routine, and a reward, meaning something that would help you to kickstart the habits. So for example, brushing your teeth. So a cue would be after you eat something, you want to brush your teeth. And the routine is brushing your teeth. And the reward is getting that spiciness in your mouth, or that the freshness in your mouth. So that is a habit as well. One thing you can look into your habit is how do you form that habit, or how does your habit work? And you can break it down and see what can you change. Or how do you feel when you read about your 3 years ago essays for your college and how to deal with it? Um, it's really funny to me because see how much you've changed as a writer, because at that point I think I read different type of materials, whether it's news articles or I've read a lot of college essays, and that's when you know that. And then that's when I started to compare the meaning of the essays, and then the current essays and the essays I wrote 3 years ago. And it feels weird, of course, but it's something that motivates you as well. It's something that motivates me to see that how much I've changed and how much I have improved as a writer. And the only way to deal with it is to just keep moving, create a milestone or set a goal. And you can keep track of your writing, like keeping your essays from 3 years ago, and then from time to time you would go back and read, so you can get an idea of how much you have improved. It's like walking up the stairs. When you walk up a couple of stairs, you might not notice the difference, but once you get to the highest flights of stairs, you would look back and you'd see how much you have become, and how high you have walked up. And that's the same part about improvement. It's just looking back and comparing yourself, and only comparing to yourself, not others, because we are different people. And yes, I do know what animations is, and I'd say about animations. Not sure what you mean by what about animations, but I assume you mean by maybe searching up or watching animes about animations. So I'm not sure about that question. And another question is how do you feel about my English now? I still I still feel like I need to improve a lot with my English. I can speak casually with friends or with people who I meet, but in terms of formal languages, I think I need to improve that. And I think that the only way to improve is to read more. I haven't been reading, but I do encourage you all to read more. And I'm starting different habits to read, whether to read 30 pages a day, which is something I'm doing now. I read about 30 pages a day, and then you can try to challenge yourself, maybe reading 50 pages a day. And maybe you can set a goal. In 1 month, I'm going to read 2 to 3 books. And just remember, reading is important, because not only it help with your mind, but also help with your writing as well. Oh, did you have any anime recommendations? I'm watching Hunter x Hunter right now. I know it's a bit off the topic, but yeah, I recommend Hunter x Hunter and Haikyuu if you are a fan of anime. Mangas and webtoons. I'm going to assume by the question, what about manga and webtoon? I'm going to assume you mean, how do you practice your English reading mangas or webtoon? Oh, I don't have any recommendations, but like I mentioned, when you read mangas and webtoon, you can try to understand the dialogues and the picture presented, and make connections between how does this character say this word or say this dialogue, and what's their actions. Because it's not just about the speaking, it's about the body language as well. Body language will help you to communicate better and give a better sense of what you're trying to say to the audience. I do remember my first time when I started learning English. And I remember when I started counting, I don't know how to count beyond 3. I could count only to 1, 2, and 3. And I think in a week, I had to learn how to count to 1,000. I'm not sure. I don't have a good memories of that. But you can always start slow. You don't have to start really fast. You've seen people who maybe they start off with, writing different words, or can maybe say 1,000 words. But we all start from different places. And do you have a good books to recommend? Well, I do have a few good books to recommend. Actually, I have one right. Oh. So this is a book called Creative Blindness, and it's a really good book because it teaches. It's a collections of creative events that happen in the world, and it gives a perspective of how people solve problem in creative ways. It's not the stories. It's a non-fiction book, but I think it's something that you guys should check out. And if you look for maybe fictions or non-fiction books, there's something called The Fault in Our Stars or Wonder. There's also a good book called Wonder. I think a lot of my friends would actually agree that it's a good book. There's also a movie. So if you read a book, maybe if there's a book and a movie of the same titles, I would recommend reading the book first, and then you can reward yourself by watching the movies. And I do have a lot of books but I don't have one or two in mind right now. But yeah, The Fault in Our Stars is a really good book, especially even for teenagers as well. Well, thank you to Alex for recommending the anime, and I'll be sure to check it out. I'll add it to my anime watch list.
Okay. Thank you so much, our guest speaker. Thank you so much, and also thank you so much to our audience, our participant. It seems like it's a very interesting topic that after presented, and there are many questions that our guest try to explain, share some experience, some techniques that related to our topic. I thank you so much. Okay, so now we can say it's time, and if we have more time, we still have more questions. And okay, thank you so much. So at last, from from the ANGKOR Intellectual Academy, we have only a small gift, just a certificate for hand over to our guest speaker. So please enjoy it. Okay. Oh wait, and if participants have questions, you can contact to our guest speaker and ask. Okay, thank you. Okay, that is our sorry. Okay, so would like to say thank you to our guest speaker, Mr. I Chhlorm Serey Niron, okay, for sharing like the experience that you have ever had since you were in from high school until right now. Okay, so thank you, and we have only a short video. Okay, yes, this one. I hope you can see it. Okay, can you see that one, right?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay, so thank you so much, I think, Mr. Niron. Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah. Okay, so thank you again. Thank you again for our guest speaker for sharing for today's topic. Okay, so before we say goodbye, could you please turn on video and we're gonna take some pictures from here. Okay, and don't forget to write the reflection journal, especially the red. In my student and everyone's here. Okay, please. បាទឥឡូវសូមបើកវីដេអូមុននឹងចប់ហើយសូមអ្នកចូលរួមទាំងអស់សូមរាយ reflection journal ដែលខ្ញុំបានផ្ញើចូលនៅក្នុង group BiWeekly Talk បាទដើម្បីយើងឆ្លាញ់ធ្វើជាវិញ្ញាបនបត្រជូនក្នុងការដែលបានចូលរួមបាទសូមសូមកាមេរ៉ាទាំងអស់គ្នាបាទហើយយើង say goodbye បាទហើយសូមបេះដូងអ្នកមួយបាទខ្ញុំរត់ដល់3សូមចុចណាបាទ1 3បាទឈើមិញហួរបិទកាមេរ៉ាឈឹងបាទសុំមួយទៀតបាទសុំបោះទៀតបាទ1 2 3បាទសុំអរបាទគុណបាទសូមអរគុណច្រើនបាទសូមអរគុណច្រើនអ្នកចូលរួមសូមអរគុណអដឹកនាំសូមអរគុណដល់guest speaker បានផ្សាយនៅអបសរថ្ងៃនេះបាទសូមអរគុណច្រើនហើយយើងជួបគ្នានៅសប្តាហ៍ក្រោយៗទៀតសូមអរគុណច្រើន
Thank you, teacher. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, guest speaker. See you.
Thank you, Niron.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Goodbye, teacher.
Goodbye, yes.
Our guest.
Goodbye, teacher.
Bye.